This video is brought to you by Squarespace. From custom domains to beautiful websites using their easily customizable templates that you can have up and running in minutes, e-commerce, email and email marketing, SEO, analytics, and scheduling, Squarespace does it all and has done it for us for the last 6 years. If you are a small to mid-sized business in any industry, Squarespace is the place to go for all of your website needs. Hop over to www.squarespace.com/Hugh for a free trial. And if you like what you see and want to move forward, receive 10% off your first order by using the discount code Hugh at checkout. Thanks, Squarespace. When the GH5 came out 4 years ago, the competitive landscape was very different. It was a camera that did things no other camera could do as well, if at all, at the price, size, or weight. And it did it in a way unmatched to this day, which is to say it just plain worked. No gobbledygook menu system, no halfway touch implementation, no combination of settings resulting in dead ends with cryptic, unactionable messages. Is that a word? If it isn't, it should be. No overheating, no bloated codecs, no stupid crops, no recording limit. DCI 4K 24p 10-bit 422 recorded internally. UHD 4K 60p recorded internally too at 8-bit 420. ISO usable up to 12,800 for us. Log, wave forms. A great EVF, great IBIS, dual card slots, flippy screen, full-sized HDMI port, USB-C port, weather sealed, exposure triangle operable while holding the camera with one hand. Whip-fast autofocus for stills. Workable video autofocus in the real worlds of narrative storytelling and documentary work, if you knew what you were doing, access to a vast selection of glass courtesy of adapters and a short flange distance, a few native lenses that remain extraordinary by any measure in any format, like a DG Vario Elmerit 50-200 2.8-4 and the more recent Vario Summilux 10-25 1.7, and a $2,000 price tag that beggared belief. You'd have to pay 2 or 3 times that minimum for a dedicated video camera that could do as much because no hybrid camera could touch it. And no video camera, dedicated video camera, offered that EVF or IBIS. If it didn't look like the work of legendary industrial designer Dieter Rams, it certainly worked like one, embodying his ethos most economically captured, of course, by the man himself when he said, "You cannot understand good design if you do not understand people. Design is for people. Don't get me started." But it's not as simple as that, is it? The harsh reality is that with the arrival of Sony's hybrid phase detect, autofocus equipped, and IBIS equipped A7 III for the same $2,000 a year later, Fujifilm's hybrid phase detect autofocus equipped only XT3 for just $1,500 6 months after that, the entry finally of Canon, Nikon, and Panasonic into the full-frame mirrorless segment, and most recently the shrinking and lowering the price of full-frame cameras like the Sony A7C and Panasonic's own S5. The one thing that the GH5 needs beyond all else, beyond better noise performance at extremely high ISOs, beyond modestly refined color science, beyond more resolution, stills, and video, is a massive update to its autofocus system. But with this GH5 II, that update hasn't arrived. But it's not that simple either. Hey everybody, I'm Hugh Brownstone for 3 Blind Men and an Elephant, and this is going to be a relatively, moderately, kind of short video because I'm very clear about what I'm seeing in the GH5 II, especially since the GH5 has been our daily driver ever since we bought one, brand spanking new, the day it became available March 31st, 2017. In fact, rather than rehash what I've already covered previously, I'll simply direct you to the links for all of our previous GH5, G9, S5, heck, all of our Panasonic videos in the show notes down below. Instead, I'll just cut to the chase, which is this. The GH5 Mark II is essentially the same GH5 as before, the good news being that it shares all the goodness and most of the accessories from the GH5, from the battery grip to the XLR mic adapter, only now it has the innards of the G9, which already offered better color, better IBIS, and better autofocus than the original GH5, hold that thought, and has been further upgraded with no-crop DCI 4K 60p 10-bit 420 recorded internally, 10-bit 422 externally, USB-C 3.1, which can now supply power while filming as well as charging, 6.5 stops of IBIS for reals, human face, eye, head, body, and animal recognition, a modestly higher visibility rear panel, a new higher capacity battery, pre-installed Vlog-L, Cinelike D2 and V2, and a couple of new simulations called L Classic Neo and L Monochrome S, a new coating on the sensor itself to reduce flare, and updated processor to make the rest of all of this possible, and an entirely new set of very cleverly conceived and executed live streaming capabilities via Wi-Fi that really deserve a much closer look than I'm going to give it here, primarily because I've got so much on my plate, and it really deserves a video of its own. Hold that thought for another video. For all that, the price of the GH5 II is a modest $350 bump to $1,700 from the current GH5's $1,350 as I'm recording this. Looks like pre-ordering begins immediately with shipping beginning in July. In short, and especially given the simultaneous development announcements of a GH6 slated for delivery later this year sporting 4K 120p and 5.7K internal recording, along with a new 25 to 51.7 Vario Sumilux, it appears that the GH5 II, like its price, is a modest interim response to a much more competitive market, on the way to Panasonic delivering a Micro Four Thirds version of Sony's A7S III, which is fascinating. Especially, I think, if it is significantly less expensive, and I expect it will be. Although, should it choose to do so, as it has on more than one occasion in the past, Sony could well bring down the price of the A7S III were it to conclude it necessary to do so. Let's see how the GH6 is priced when it arrives. And when it does arrive, will it have performant hybrid phase detect AF? Or will it have contrast detect DFD autofocus that finally achieves parity with the best from Sony and Canon? I guess we'll see soon enough, although the trajectory of Panasonic's autofocus improvements suggests probably not, which is not necessarily a reason to throw in the towel, but it does pain me to say it. In the meantime, the immediate issue is that the GH5 II may not be what many of us wanted, and to be blunt, it may not be enough for many of us to remain in the Micro Four Thirds fold, but hang on, because one, Panasonic's transformation of the GH5 II into a remote on-location, live broadcasting, interchangeable lens camera workhorse to Facebook and YouTube using nothing more than your smartphone, which your smartphone can already do on its own, save for the workhorse ILC part, just might change the economics and face of electronic news gathering. And two, a GH5 that out G9s the current G9 for $1,700 just might be compelling to more people than one might imagine. I know, because we've been using the G9 as our B cam for location shooting over the last 2 years, and it is noticeably better than the GH5 in situations where conventional wisdom would dictate that only a full-frame camera will do. Perfectly fit for purpose. Like this. It is also the case that Micro Four Thirds is still unmatched for compact glass at the long end, with that Vario Elmrit 50-200 continuing to leave me gobsmacked. As recently as last week, actually, when I took one on a GH5 II down to the beach with Claudia and got images like this. Now, this is a full-frame equivalent of a 100 to 400 millimeter in a package dramatically smaller, lighter, less expensive than, and with twice the reach of, a full-frame S5 with Panasonic's S Pro 70 to 200 2.8. We're talking 3200 versus 4300, 1300 grams give or take versus 2200 grams. Or are we? Because there's the rub. Full frame is where the industry has put the lion's share of its effort. And it shows. Never mind the rest of the industry, actually. Panasonic is now selling the S5 for the same $1,700 it's charging for the GH5 II, and you can buy the excellent Sigma 100 to 400 5.63 for $950. Yes, it's almost 50% heavier than the Micro Four Thirds combo, and that matters to us, but it's also $650 cheaper and can go shallower. If you want more resolution, you're SOL in the Micro Four Thirds world, while the L-mount Alliance, again, alone gives you the choice of Panasonic's 47-megapixel S1R and Leica's SL2 and Sigma's 61-megapixel FPL. But their autofocus isn't great either when it comes to video or sports or wildlife stills. On the other hand, the autofocus on a Sony A7C, as just one example, is, and with that same Sigma lens, you're still talking $450 less and only a couple of hundred grams more than the GH5 II with the 50 to 200. There's the APS-C ecosystem of Fujifilm to consider too. Their hybrid phase detect AF and IBIS-equipped X-T4, very much the APS-C equivalent of the GH5 II in most ways, sells for the same $1,700. And with their new $800 70 to 304 to 5.6, the full frame equivalent of 105 to 450, which I have not had in hand, this combo comes in at $700 and 193 grams less than a GH5 II with the 50 to 200. Okay, its autofocus is still quite not on par with the systems from Sony and Canon, but it's better than the Panasonics. We haven't even talked about what's happening at the wider end, so let's do that just for a minute. Something like the little Leica DG Summilux 15 1.7 is wonderful. We own one. But with Sigma and Sony releasing ultra-compact primes at f2 with shallower depths of field and priced within $100 or so, or the magnificent but very large and expensive $1,800 Vario Summilux 10 to 25 1.7, with which I'm recording right now, a full-frame equivalent of 20 to 53.4, suddenly having to compete on the basis of specs anyway, with Panasonic's own surprisingly performant $600 350-gram full-frame 20 to 63.5 to 5.6. One could argue there is now little to no advantage in staying with Micro Four Thirds, at least on the basis of lens size, weight, and price, at that end either. All while Sony, Canon, and Nikon are pouring enormous sums into their lens ecosystems and creating some stellar optics, the performance and value of Nikon's Nikkor Z1.8 primes standing above all the others, especially as far as I'm concerned. So, is that it then? Does this GH5 II, along with the development announcement of the GH6 and Vario Summilux 25 to 50, rounding out the holy trinity zooms, satisfy your needs, create new types of opportunities for you, or do you think they actually signify that it's game over for Micro Four Thirds, that the advantages in size, weight, and price, functionality, have disintegrated into wisps carried away on the wind like an erotic dream? Whoa, where did that come from? As for me, my view is this. Taken in isolation, the Mark II is, as I've said a number of times now, a modest update for a modest price, except if you have the ambition and imagination to take advantage of the live Wi-Fi streaming. Do check that out. On the other hand, in the real world of the here and now, the goodness of the G9, which from autofocus to color science and more is better than the original GH5 and better than conventional wisdom suggests, now made even better and stuffed into the GH5 II, may be much better than you think. If you love your GH5-based system, but have wished for the end of background flutter for talking headshots, pretty much you've got it now in the GH5 II, though you can judge for yourself since I've recorded this video with it, as I just said, along with the Vario Summilux 10-25 1.7. Wide open, by the way. If you want better color straight out of the camera, you've now got it in the GH5 II. Absolutely. If you want dynamic camera movement, but don't want to carry a gimbal because you want to be stealth, I hear you. And don't want to shell out for Canon EOS R6, which, by the way, Canon thought would be fine with 20 megapixels too. You've got it in the GH5 II in a way the original GH5 and just about every other camera in the market, save perhaps for some manner of Olympus, does not. Unlimited DCI 4K 24p with absolutely no concerns about overheating. The GH5 and now the GH5 II are as good as it gets in hybrids. If this or no crop 10-bit 422 DCI 4K 60p to a Ninja 5 do it for you, or any of the other things I've already mentioned the GH5 II does bring to the table, the GH5 II is a relatively painless upgrade, absolutely worthy of consideration. But if you've been waiting for sticky tracking autofocus, whack-a-mole product showcase autofocus, no excuses sports and wildlife AF stills or video, no, this isn't what you've been waiting for. Given how our needs have evolved since last March, here at Three Blind Men and an Elephant, we have to look beyond Micro Four Thirds at this point for an autofocus solution. Unfortunately, we also have to look beyond the L-mount alliance until such time as their autofocus systems close the gap with the current state-of-the-art. We simply don't know when that will be, but we've got too much to do and we cannot wait. We will be augmenting our commercial kit with another brand shortly. Those of you who know me know that I've been going back and forth a little bit on this, but hold that thought for another video too. Which is fine. We're used to, and in some ways prefer, separate kit for our personal and commercial work. We just wish we didn't have to stretch to a third brand, but nothing is forever. In fact, given that full-frame manufacturers are offering smaller, more keenly priced, but highly performant optics, and are likely to continue the pursuit of ever higher resolution sensors, the probability of getting to a single full-frame mount, for us, and giving up very little in the way of size or weight to Micro Four Thirds or APS-C by using that resolution instead of big glass, seems inevitable over the next couple of years. Whether pricing comes down to meet the Micro Four Thirds system? Hey, what do I know? This episode was brought to you by Squarespace. For all of your website needs, Squarespace is the place to go. Hop over to www.squarespace.com/hugh for a free trial. And if you like what you see and want to move forward, receive 10% off your first order by using the discount code HUGH at checkout. Thanks, Squarespace. If you like what you've seen here today, please give a thumbs up, subscribe, join the conversation below because this is an incredible audience. If you'd like a copy of our Streets of New York, the book, head over to www.3bmep.com/books. If you'd like to schedule a one-on-one video session with me for a portfolio review, explore or hone your artistic voice, select gear, and more, sign up at www.3bmep.com/booking. Finally, consider supporting our work by using our no-cost-to-you affiliate links down below, picking up some official Three Blind Men and an Elephant swag at 3bmep.threadless.com, sending coffee money via PayPal, or best of all, join us as a patron over at Patreon. However you choose to support us, as always, we thank you for it.